Hello. We left off on chapter 7. If you remember, Patrick was over and he saw a little bear and he really, really wants his own little guy. And remember, he has a cowboy in his pocket. And the title of this chapter is Cowboy. So what do you think happens? Omri gaped at him. He hadn't thought of this, but of course, now that he did, it was obvious. No boy knew that the secret could possibly rest until he had their very own little person. Patrick, it's not what you think. Just something to play with. Of course not. You've explained all about it. Now just let me put... But you have to think about it first. No, stop. You can't yet. And anyways, I don't agree with you using one of mine. Omri didn't know why he was so reluctant. It wasn't that he was mean. He just knew somehow that something awful was going to happen if he let Patrick have his own way. But it wasn't easy to stop him. Omri had grabbed him, but he wrenched free. I've got to, he panted. I just got to. He stretched out his hand towards the pile of soldiers again. They struggled. Patrick seemed to have gone a little bit crazy. Suddenly, Omri felt the rim of the tin plate under his feet. He shoved Patrick out of the way, and they both stared down at the plate that had tipped. The fire had slipped off onto the carpet. Little Bear, with a yell, leaped off and was clear, now waving his arms, shouting horrible things at both of them. His roast meat had disappeared under Omri's foot, which instinctively stamped down on the fire to put it out. He felt a squishy feeling under his shoe. Now look. You've spoiled the meat, he shouted at Patrick. If all you can do is fight, I wish you'd never brought you in here. Patrick looked mullish. It was your fault. You should have just let me put something in the cupboard. Omri lifted his shoe, and underneath it was a nasty mess of burned stuff, squished meat bent over in the erector set, and Little Bear let out a wail. You no great spirit. You only stupid boy. Fight, spoil good meat. You should feel shame. Maybe we can rescue it. So he crouched down and disentangled the meat from the bottom of his shoe with his fingers. He tried to brush it clean, but it was no use. It was all mixed up with the smelly stuff on the fire lighter, and it was stuck with bits of carpet hairs. I'm terribly sorry, Little Bear, he mumbled. No good sorry. Little Bear hungry. Work all day. Cook meat. Now what eat? I chop you down like tree. And to Omri's horror, he saw Little Bear run and go get the battle axe. He was lying there. He picked it up and advanced towards his legs, swinging in great big circles as he came. Patrick fairly danced with excitement. Isn't he fantastic? Brave? Look at him. Much more than David and Goliath. Omri felt the whole thing was going too far. He removed his leg from harm's way. Little Bear, calm down, he said. I have said I'm sorry. Little Bear looked at him, blazing eyes, and then he rushed over to the chair on Omri's table and began chopping out wedges of the leg. Stop, or I'll put you back in the cupboard. Little Bear stopped abruptly, dropped the axe, and he stood with his back to him, his shoulders heaving. I'll get you something to eat right now, something delicious. Go and paint. It'll make you feel better. I won't be long. To Patrick, he said, hang on. I can smell supper cooking. I'll go get a bit of whatever we're having and rush downstairs without even stopping to think. His mother was dishing up a nice hot stew. Can I have a tiny bit of that, Mum? Just a little bit in a spoon? It's for a game we're playing. His mother obligingly gave him a big spoonful. Don't let it drip, she said. Does Patrick want to stay for supper? I don't know. I'll ask, said Omri. Were you two fighting upstairs? I heard thumps. No, not really. It was just he wanted something that And Omri stopped dead, as if frozen to the ground. He might have been frozen. His face was so cold. Patrick was up there with the cupboard with 2 biscuit tins full of plastic figurines, alone. Omri, he usually won the egg spoon race at the school sports, which was just as well because it was hard enough carrying an egg and a spoon running along a flat field. It was a great deal harder to carry a tablespoonful of boiling meat, hot stew, steady while you rush up a flight of stairs. It was almost there until when he got to the top. It was more by good luck than skill, because he was hardly noticed that he had the spoon in his hand at all. All he could think of was what might be happening, no, what must be happening in his room, and how much more it would happen if he didn't hurry. He burst through the room and saw exactly what he thought. What he dreaded. Patrick bent over the cupboard, just turning the key to open it. "What?" Omri gasped out between panting breaths. He had no idea how to go on. Patrick, without turning around, opened the cupboard and reached in, and he pulled out in his turn. He was gazing into the cupboard's hands, eyes huge like marbles. He slowly extended his hand towards Omri and whispered, "Look." Omri, stepping forward, had just time to feel intensely glad that at least Patrick had not put the whole bagful or handful of figurines in, but he had only changed one. But which one? He leaned over and drew back with a gasp. It was the cowboy and the horse. The horse was in an absolute panic. It was scrambling wildly about in the cup of Patrick's hand, snorting, pawing, up one minute, down the next. Stirrups and reins are flying. It was a beautiful horse, snow white with a long mane and a tail, and the sight of it acting frightened gave Omri's heart pains. As for the cowboy, he was too busy dodging the horse's flying feet and jumping out of the way when it fell to notice much about his surroundings. He probably thought he was caught in the earthquake. Omri and Patrick watched, spellbound, as the little man, in his plaid shirt, buckskin trousers, high-heeled leather boots, and a big hat, scrambled frantically to the side of Patrick's right hand and was dodging the space between the index finger and the thumb. He swung himself clear of the horse, only to look down and find that he was dangling over some empty space. His hat came off and fell slowly, like a leaf down. Down to the floor, so infinitely far below. The cowboy gave a yell, and then he scrabbled to his feet against the back of Patrick's hand, hanging on for dear life to the ridge beside the thumbnail. "Hold your hands still," Omri commanded Patrick, who was in such an excitement he was jerking them nervously about. There was a moment of stillness, and the horse stopped, trembling all over, prancing about in terror. Besides his hooves, there was some tiny black thing. Omri peered closer. To his horror, it was a pistol. The cowboy had now recovered a little bit, and he scrambled back through the finger gap and said something to the horse that sounded like, "Whoa, steady, fella." Then he slid down and grabbed the reins, holding them just below the horse's nose. He patted his face. That seemed to calm it. Then, looking down swiftly between, noticing the enormous faces hung over him, he reached cautiously down and picked up the pistol from between his horse's hooves. "Whoa, there, stand!" Omri watched the person as like he was hypnotized. He wanted to cry out to Patrick that this was a real gun, but somehow he just couldn't do it. He could only think of the sound of his voice would throw the horse and the man into a panic again. And he watched while the cowboy pointed the gun various directions warily, and he lowered it. Still holding the reins, he moved until he could press his hand against Patrick's skin. Then he let his eyes move upward, curved the fingers just level to the top of his head. "What in the doggone heck?" he said. "Sure looks like a great big... what am I talking about? It can't be. Heck, it just ain't possible." But the more he looked, the more certain he must have become that he was indeed in a pair of cupped hands. And finally, after scratching his gingery head for a moment, he ventured to look up past his fingers, and then, of course, he saw Patrick's face looking at him. There was a petrified moment when he couldn't move. Then he raised his pistol in a flash. "Patrick, shut your eyes!" Bang! It was only a little bang, but it was a real bang, and a puff of real gun smoke smelling appeared. Patrick shouted with pain and surprise. He would have dropped the pair if Omri hadn't put his hands underneath to catch him. Patrick's own hand had clapped himself to his cheek. "Ow! Ow! He shot me! He shot me!" Patrick screamed. Omri was not much bothered about Patrick at the moment. He was furious with him and very anxious that the little horse and the little man might get hurt. So quickly he put them down on the bed, saying, Like the cowboy himself, steady. Whoa, I will not hurt you. It's okay. Ow! Patrick kept yelling. It hurts, ow! Serves you right. I warned you, said Omri. Then he felt sorry and let's have a look, he said. Gingerly, Patrick took his hand down and dropped a blood smeared on his cheek. And by peering very close, Omri could see something very small, like a bee stinger embedded in the skin. Hang on. I see it. I'll squeeze it out. Ow! A quick squeeze between the thumbnails and almost invisibly speck of black metal, which had only just penetrated his skin, popped out. He shot me, Patrick got out again in a shocked voice. I told you. My Indian stuck me with a knife, said Omri, not to be outdone. I think we ought to put him back. Your cowboy, I mean. Of course, not my Indian. Put him back where? Omri explained how the cupboard could change things back into plastic, but Patrick wasn't having any of that. Oh, no. I want him. He's terrific. Look at him now. Patrick feasted his eyes admiringly on the little cowboy, who, ignoring the giants, whom he clearly thought must have been imagined, was doggedly dragging his horse across Omri's quilt as if he was wading through some blue dunes in some blue pale desert. Omri reached for him determinedly, but Patrick stepped into his path. Don't you touch him. I bought him and I changed him. He's mine. You bought him for me. You said you didn't want him. Well, but the cupboard is mine and I told you not to use it. And so what if I did? Anyway, it's done. He's alive now and I'm keeping him. I'll bash you right in your head if you try to take him. Wouldn't you bash me if I took your Indian? Omri was silent. That reminded him. Where was Little Bear? He looked around and soon spotted him at the other side of the room, busy with his paints. Some beautiful miniature designs showing turtles, herons, and beavers, many in red and yellow, had appeared on the side of the teepee that Omri had made. As Omri crouched beside him to admire him, Little Bear, without looking at him, said, You bring food? I very soon die if not eat. Omri looked around. What had he done with the spoonful of stew? But soon he saw it, and it was there. He put it down on the table without thinking. There it sat, tilting slightly, spilling just a few drops of gravy, but still steaming. He hurried into Little Bear's, or rather Action Man's, mess tin, and the paper plate had gotten all soggy, and carefully he filled it with hot, savory stuff. Here you are. Little Bear stepped back from his work, laid his hands down on the paintbrush, and sniffed eagerly. Ah, good, he said. He sat down cross-leggedly among the paints and lids and ate, dipping some of yesterday's stale bread in the spoon. Your wife cook? Ah, no, Little Bear forgot. Omri not got wife. He ate ravenously for a few moments and then said, Not want? I'm having mine downstairs in a minute, Omri said. Mean Omri not want wife? Said Little Bear, who was now in a much better mood. I'm not old enough for a wife. Little Bear looked at him for a moment. No, I see boy, he grinned. Big boy, but boy. He went on eating. Little Bear want, he finally said, looking up. Another wife? Chief need wife, want wife, beautiful wife, good cook, he said with his face in the mess tin, and he licked it clean. Then he looked up. With Iroquois mother find wife for son, but Little Bear mother not here. Omri must be my mother, and find. Omri couldn't quite see himself as Little Bear's mother, but he thought, well, I might try. I think I saw some lady Indians at Yaps, but what if I pick one and make her real and you don't like her? What are you going to do then? I like, you get, tomorrow. Little Bear grinned at him happily, a face smeared with gravy. Patrick came up behind him. Let's put them together and see what they do. Omri jumped up quickly. No! Why not? You're an idiot because yours has a gun, moron, and mine has a bow and arrow. And one of them will sure to kill the other one. Patrick considered, well, we could just take their weapons away from them. Come on, I'm going to. And he reached towards the bed. Just at that moment, there were sounds of the steps of the stairs, and they froze. Omri swiftly moved the dressing-up crate enough to hide Little Bear, and Patrick sat down on the end of the bed, masking the poor cowboy who was still trying to troll across the bumps of the quilt. Just in time, Omri's mother opened the door in the next second. Patrick, that was your mom. And she's on the phone, and she wants you home quite away. And Omri, it's supper. And then she went. Omri opened his mouth to protest, but Patrick said, okay. And with a quick movement, he scooped up the cowboy and the horse in his left hand and thrust them into his pocket. Omri winced. He could easily see the horse's leg being injured with such rough treatment, not to mention the matter of fright, but Patrick was already halfway out the door. Omri jumped up and grabbed his arm. Patrick, he whispered, you must be careful. You treat them carefully. They are people. I mean it. They're alive. What will you do with them? How will you hide from them, your family? I'm not. I'm going to show everybody. My brother was going to blow his mind. Omri began to think he might go out of his mind. He shook Patrick's arm. Will you think for 2 seconds? How are you going to explain? And what will happen if you tell them where you got them from? I'll do worse than bash you. You'll ruin everything. They'll take the cupboard away. That got enough into Patrick. He put his hand slowly back in his pocket. Listen then, you look after them, but remember, they're mine. I'm warning you. I will bring them to school, and you will bring them to school tomorrow. To school? Cried Aghast. I'm not bringing Little Bear to school. You can do what you want with Little Bear, because he's yours. The cowboy is mine, and I want him in school tomorrow, or I'll tell everybody. Omri let go of his arm for a moment, and they looked at each other as if they'd been strangers. But they weren't strangers. They were friends. That counts for something, and it counts for a lot in this life. So Omri gave in. Oh, all right, he said. I'll bring them. Now give them to me gently. And Patrick brought the man and the horse out of his pocket and tipped them very carefully into Omri's waiting hands. Okay, the next chapter is called Shooting Match. So what do you think happens?